So without any further ado, please welcome Clarence Featherson.
No, we do the handouts. And just Paul's question was, do I want to pass out my handouts right now? And at work and in general, I like to do, unless we're working off of the handouts, I like to do the handouts afterwards, because what happens once you pass out handouts?
Start reading it.
People start reading them, and that takes away from you up here. And when you are on stage, and this is what I consider this to be the stage, you want all eyes on you and no distractions and no competition for the audience's attention. And so handouts would do that. So I have a couple of handouts, and we'll pass those out afterwards. So Paul, how are we going to do this? Just question and answers, or if there's something that...
You're the master of this. However you like to do it.
Well, in terms of contests, I just want to say there's a lot you can learn from contests. There really is. I think it's one of the fastest ways to grow as a Toastmaster, but you only benefit from contests if you have the right attitude. One of the things that I've learned, someone, let's see, can I borrow a jacket? Just a quick, I'll give it back, I promise. Okay, here we go. Thank you. When you do contests, pretend this coat is your ego. Leave it at the door. Leave your ego at the door. That is one of the most, and can we get some applause for our volunteer who loaned me his coat? That is one of the most important lessons that I've learned as a Toastmasters in 17, 16 years of contest. Leave your ego at the door. Sometimes the better speech, the better evaluation, the better table topic wins, and sometimes it doesn't. When it comes to contests, and this is true of Toastmasters in general, your growth and your development is all based upon your attitude. In terms of contests, if you want a trophy, if you really want a trophy, don't do contests for trophies. Contests are a crapshoot. If you really want a trophy, go to a trophy store and buy one. I'm not kidding. You can have engraved on that plate, put it on your mantle, put it on your credenza, put it on your desktop at work, and no one but you knows how you got that trophy. I say do contests to get better, to stretch your comfort zone, to learn some new tips, tricks, and techniques, to see what other people are doing, to learn from more experienced people. Go to contests to learn, to grow, to get better. One of the things that I'd like to do, based upon what I've learned from Toastmasters and the journey that has taken me on, is to become a professional speaker. And early on in my Toastmasters career, I decided that was something I wanted to do. So I began to focus on contests, because what contests do is, even if it's at the club level, they make you get a little bit better. You try just a little bit harder. And this is why I said attitude is everything. And I'll give you a story. I'd like to share with you a story. It was when I was maybe into Toastmasters about 2 years. And I had spent the year before that practicing a speech for the International Speech Contest. I was a novice Toastmaster. I didn't have a lot of vocal variety. I didn't understand the importance of humor in your speeches. But it was a speech about my son and some of the problems that he had because he was born so premature, and one of his major accomplishments. And one thing I had in that story was I had passion, and I had practiced. I had been a test speaker at different area contests. I had gone around to a few clubs, gotten critiques from people, rolled into my speech, and that night I was probably as passionate as I have ever been. In fact, I was too passionate. When you are really connecting with an audience, and it's a conversation, the audience gives you energy. And that night there was such a synergy between the audience and myself that I really felt the electricity, and I got what I call a speaker's high. I mean, it was just intoxicating. And because it was intoxicating, that red light came on. And Paul, this was an earlier variation of the speech you saw where I used the whistle.
Right.
And The audience was with me. I was making my point, and I really wanted to bring my speech home with a bang. And I did, and then in the speech I had a prop, which was a whistle, and I blew that whistle. My time for that speech was 7 minutes and 31 seconds. I learned a couple of things, and the people in my club were not that experienced. My practice times had been around 7 minutes and 17 seconds. That's too close. For a 7-minute speech, and particularly for international, because the larger the audience, the more you have to factor in applause or audience reaction into your time. So you really want your international speech to be no more than 6 minutes and 30 seconds, 6 minutes and 45 max. That gives you some wiggle room in case you do a double clutch, you forget a word, you get distracted. You have built in some safety time. I was a new Toastmaster. I didn't know about that. And that one toot took me over. That morning I had competed in the evaluation contest in District 36, and I came in second. I didn't think about that at that moment. I was looking at the videographer, Mike Nolan, and videotapes and taping yourself is one of the best ways to record your progress and your development, to see how you look from the audience's point of view versus your own. And I looked at the videographer, and he said that evening, he knew that I knew I was over. And I walked off. I had been up there, and I walked back devastated. And normally, regardless of the outcome, I stick around at the end of the contest to congratulate people, to tell them how well I thought they've done. I went directly to the garage after that contest. It wasn't because I was a poor sport, it was because I was upset and I was disappointed at myself, and I really beat up on myself for a couple of months. I came into that contest going, toot, 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 toot. For 2 or 3 months afterwards, I just went, toot, shoot, toot. I kept reliving that moment in my mind and that what if, because it is one of the worst feelings in the world to be overtime and disqualified. Because it's as if you are not there. You were never there. And then they say these terrible words you don't want to hear at the end. Before we make the announcements, we have one disqualification for time. And a lot of times you're thinking, oh, is that me? Is that me? And it's not you. That night, it wasn't you. And then they call the first place, the second, and the third. And you, in one sense, mentally I thought I might as well not even have shown up. So I beat up on myself for 2 months, and at some point I had an epiphany. I said, wait a minute, something's very wrong with this picture. I said, what was my goal? My goal was to share a message, to get better, and I was much better at the end of the process than I was at the beginning. I said, in addition, I had placed second in evaluation, which was something to be proud of. But because I was so busy focusing on what I had accomplished, that I didn't really focus on what I had accomplished. And at that point, I said, you know, from now on, I'm really going to focus on getting better and having fun. And everything else is icing on the cake. Because if I had put my emphasis on getting better and having fun that night, even though I was disqualified, I could have taken away many positives from that experience. Instead, I only focused on the negative. And because I felt so badly, I didn't think for several months afterwards about competing again. And what happens is, and this is a lesson I've learned, and that's why I said attitude is everything. When some people don't win in contests, they blame the judges, they blame the audience, they blame everybody but themselves, and then they're done. They never compete again. Well, you can't learn, you can't grow. And so, in a contest, after that, going overtime that evening, I have never gone over since. It taught me to pay attention to the time. And what made it even worse is because at a district conference, you know, most of the people, a lot of people in the district are there. And I was in Maryland Advanced, and I think at that time I was in 3 or 4 clubs. And every club I went to, when they started talking about contests and the need for staying in time, they would just point to me in the audience and say, there's a perfect example. Clarence was rocking that night, and then he went over. And the whole room sort of turns around. This is slow-mo, you know, and it's like, and they're looking at you, and you're looking at them, and you're just saying, not again. And so that's one point I just like to share with people about contests. Attitude is everything. If you want a trophy? Go to a store. If you want to get better, do contests. And what you can do is, one, for me, I say attitude is everything, because when I don't do as well as I'd like, whether it's in my performance or in the outcome, it motivates me to try harder. I will get a videotape from the videographer, or if someone has taped me, I will study what I did and try to look and see what I could have done better. I will ask people like Paul, I will ask other people, what do you think I could have done better? I will look at the person who won. If there's a videotape of their performance, I will watch their tape, I will study their tape, the people who did better. I want to know what they did that I didn't do. I will watch them at the next level. Some people lose at the club level and they don't go to the area. Well, aren't you curious to see how the person who beat you did at the next level, and then how the person did at that next level? And so that's something I see the people who do very well. They will go around and watch and see how the people who beat them did. And they're lessons, they're very important lessons to be learned. I've gone to watch and not been a participant, and I would think anywhere from 50 to maybe 75 contests, possibly more. After a while, they all just sort of run together in your head. Because I study contests, public speaking as a science. And so I have to watch and see and learn, and I try to do takeaways. But when I was very early on in the process, I went to an area contest, and it was a distinguished Toastmaster, Art Kelly, longtime Toastmaster. He was a contest master that evening. And I'll never forget, before he made the contest announcement results, Art said, for those who won tonight, and Art has this, I think he's a Texas boy originally, sometimes he has a cowboy hat, but Art has a little twang, and he said, for those who won tonight, I congratulate you, and for those who didn't win, I congratulate you. Because for those who didn't win in front of a group of different judges, you might have won. And for those who won in front of a group of different judges, you might not have won. But you gotta dance with the one who brung you. So here are the announcements. And I thought about that. I said, yeah, that's right. So, and that brings me to an issue in terms of judging. Some judges have gone to the judging workshops, they're very experienced. Some are not. There's a form, and there are ballots for every contest. But it's not like sprint or track and field where you can see where the shot could actually land compared to someone else's, or sprint when they hit that tape, the computer will tell you who came first, who came second, because it's mathematical precision. So one judge can look at a contestant's performance and see something totally different. People bring biases into it in terms of not necessarily for or against a contestant, and that sometimes happens too, but there's certain styles of speaking that they like. Sometimes people don't like people who move around a lot. Sometimes people like people who specifically tell stories. So there are different things. So even though the ballot is there, how a judge interprets it, you have no control over it. And because you have no control over it, again, if your emphasis is on getting better, trying to learn as much as possible, then the outcome isn't really based upon if you get a trophy. It's based upon, are you better at the end of the process than when you begin? And that's what contests do. Are you comfortable doing a contest at your club level? Well, those are faces that you know. Now let's go to the area. New faces. Maybe a larger room. A little scarier. And then let's go on to the division level. Even more faces, bigger room. So each time you go on, you are stretching your comfort zone. And you're learning a little more. Now, the problem I've seen with contests sometimes is people take them too seriously. They think because they win, they are the better speaker. Not necessarily. They may be the ones that have the most points by the judges' ballots. They may be the only one who didn't go overtime. Again, early on in my Toastmasters career, and I'm really committed to contests. We were expecting my second child, and my daughter Imani was due right around that Friday, Saturday when the contest was going to be held. So I asked my wife Marley, I said, could you hold off
I can't.
And no, I actually did. And so the contest was that Saturday. My daughter was born that Friday, so I presented to my wife. But what happened was, for the table topics portion, my wife said, "Do you want me to drive you because you're going to be nervous and anxious?" I said, "No, actually, I'll find my way there." And actually, I did. And so I got so turned around. And at one point, I was right across the highway from the hotel, but I didn't want to walk across the highway. It was 301. And that was before GPS and those other things. And I had called AAA, and they said exit 18, but they didn't say there was an 18 A, B, and C. So I get back on the highway, 301. Okay, A, B, or C. I'll go with C. C was not the right answer. I got so turned around, it took me an hour and a half to get back. Every road I took turned into another wrong road, to another wrong road. And I literally, from being 5 minutes away, I wound up being over an hour away.
Wow.
And Johnny Rodriguez was in that contest. There were 5 of us. Johnny is a very experienced, proficient, dynamic, table topics contestant, district winner. He went over. So of the 5 people who were competing, and there were 3 places, that meant all you had to do was be there. And you got 1, 2, 3 because Johnny went over and I was lost. And so there are all kinds of lessons. So what that means is the people who won that day, were they the best? Maybe, I don't know, but you don't look at it like this. You just, again, just say you gave it your best shot, you had fun, you try to watch and learn and grow. And when I say some people take it too seriously, there are some people that if they do not win, not only will they sometimes not compete again, they'll leave Toastmasters, I've seen that. Some get depressed. This past, I don't think I told you this, Paul. This is a true story. So in this year, the international conference was in Cincinnati. And in Cincinnati, you have 88 contestants, all of the district winners from the 116 countries that have Toastmasters. They all come together, and it is a very humbling experience. Because you may be hot stuff in your district, but when you see people who are won at the world level or the world finalists, and you compare your performance to theirs, it really brings you down to reality. And after a couple of days, most people have, as Darren LaCoy, who was the 2001 winner, said in his workshop, he said the day after the semifinals, I know most of you are out there licking your wounds, other than the 9 who were going on stage on Saturday, and that was so true. But that Saturday after the conference was over, my wife and I met a young lady. She was from Canada, and she was one of the semifinalists. And that was the first time in her life, I guess, she had really not gone on to the next level and done as well as she thought. She was originally from India, and she said in India she had won the subcontinent public speaking contest, and maybe she was better than 10,000 people. And when we asked her how it was going, she said, I just came out of my room. I've been in there for the past 2 days after the contest. And the day after the contest, I went down to the bridge.
Oh my goodness.
And I said, what? And I sat there, and my little radar said, no, you don't walk on the bridge, it'll be about 5 or 6 blocks. You don't go and sit on the bridge to contemplate. And that's, I guess, the extent of how upset she was at not doing it. And then you're kind of like, whoa. Well, you know, I hate to tell you this, but as they say when, I guess, you deal with some of the commercials for the stock market and other things, past performance is no indication of future performance, and that's how it goes in terms of contests. Because you win 1 year does not mean you are going to win the next year. And for this young lady, again, tried to tell her, hey, let's put it in perspective. You got here, you were one of 88. She was young, she was maybe 25, 26, graduate student in Canada. You've got so many years ahead of you. Please don't take trips down to the bridge. And I don't know what kind of deep thoughts you were thinking, but it seemed kind of scary. Then you get other people, again, who when they win, they think they're the greatest. No. Again, it's just how the chips fell on that particular night. Sometimes you may work harder than other people. You may not win with your best speeches. But if you have the right attitude, and again, you're trying to get better, and you're trying to expand your comfort zone, then you really are a winner. And I'll tell you a true story. And this is, you know, what I really like is when you're sequestered for table topics and evaluation, because just the contestants are in the room, the sergeant of arms will come in and get you. But sometimes there is stuff going on in the room that you won't believe. And this was a Division A contest several years ago. And we're in the room table topics. So most people are trying to get their mind clear and relax and get ready to get called out there. And I saw this woman walk over to each contestant, just like in the Old West, like she was a gunslinger. Hi. You ever been, I'm not kidding, you ever been in a division level table topics contest before? And of course most people were novices. So it was like, no. And she said, well, I was in one last night, my area contest. We had 75 people. And of course a lot of contestants said, oh my God, she won in a contest where there were 75 people in the audience. She must be better than me. And so I'm over in the corner minding my own business and watching what's going on. But first of all, I'm thinking, oh, you're lying. Don't get 75 people at an area contest. I've been to one where they probably did, but I'm thinking, oh no, you gotta be kidding me. And she made her way, I'm not kidding, to every contestant. And then it's like, so actually it's like, yeah, I'm really waiting for it to come on. Here it comes. Hey. Yeah, why? You talking to me? Yeah. You ever been in a division contest before? I said, yeah, I've been in one. And she said, well, I was in. I said, okay, I think I've heard this. She said, well, I said, and then I just stopped her. I said, well, you know, you're probably going to do better than I am tonight. Well, why is that? I said, well, because last year I won it. And you rarely have someone win it 2 years in a row. Which is true. And she just sauntered off. I surprised her and myself. I did put it again that night. But what happened is when she lost, she didn't place, she stormed out of the room. She didn't talk to the judges. She didn't talk to anyone. What's very important is feedback. Now judges are not allowed to give you feedback after a contest. Before, several years ago, you could go up to a judge and say, well, what did you think, or how did I do? I remember at my first division contest, so I won the area, yay! And I really had no clue as what goes into an international speech. And I went to the division, and Johnny, that was the first night I saw Johnny Rodriguez speak, and it was about his experiences growing up as the child of alcoholics in the South Bronx and thinking of himself as someone without value and a throwaway child. And at the end of a speech, and these are techniques that people do, he works now with children who are children of alcoholics, Al-Anon, and he had a group. And he said the kids, at the very end of his speech, were yelling out, we love you, Johnny, we love you. And I'm almost crying. I'm taking off my glasses and I'm saying it's allergies. and the kids in the speech go, we love you, Johnny. I go, oh, this is so unfair. I love Johnny, but I'm competing against her. I can't believe this. I love Johnny. And it was really, it was a learning experience. And I didn't place, I didn't close to placing. And then Ulysses Little, very older Toastmaster who's been around forever, came up to me afterwards. And I was sort of in shock, because you figure, well, you won at the area, you must be good. You're going on to the division, and then afterwards you're trying to understand what happened. Without someone to really interpret, you don't know what happened. And Ulysses came up and he did me a favor. He said, hey, you want to know why you didn't win? I said, yes. He said, you had no vocal variety. You only had loud and louder. And I thought you had a metal rod through your body because you stayed in one place and you yelled at us. Which is true. I'm very comfortable and can be loosey-goosey up here because of meeting a past District 36 governor named Jill Lamb and Jim Whitney. And what's funny is, 2 years ago in District 27, I did for my international speech, the speech about my first meeting Jill. And when I first met her, and she's like a drill sergeant, but she really is tough love, but it's tough love at its most extreme. And I thought she was the meanest lady that I had ever met in my life. And I didn't understand that people at that time some people are into members of multiple clubs. So being an experienced Toastmaster, and Jill is very strict on protocol and etiquette, and I was the guest Toastmaster evening at the National Toastmasters press conference. And I made so many mistakes that, and Jill is not one who will basically, in the normal Toastmaster protocol, sort of correct you afterwards, pull you aside. She basically stopped the meeting, froze it down, and pointed out every single error that I had made. I felt like this. And I went home and I told my wife, I said, I have met the meanest person in the world. I never want to see her again. So National Press Club is in downtown Washington. I started going to clubs in Silver Spring. She was in Silver Spring Toastmasters. I said, I can't believe this. Then I went to Toast Us, another club that at the time was in Park. She was in there. And maybe a year after that, I went to Dale Shalborn Toastmasters Club, which was really her club, and I just gave up. And Jill and Jim Whitney, they'll watch me give a speech. And after I finished, Jill turned to Jim and she said, see, I told you he hadn't had a stroke. He can move his right arm. What happened is, as I spoke, and at the time, I only used one arm, I was still very serious. And Jim, it's so interesting because Jim was soft love type. And so between the two of them, they let me know that it really doesn't go well with the audience when you are very stiff and when you are uptight as a speaker. And what Jim said to me was the audience cannot unwind until you do. And then what Jill told me to do is, in no certain terms, and Jill isn't someone that you really ask why, you just do it her way or it's the highway. And she said, do nothing but humor for 6 months. All of your speeches, do humorous speeches for 6 months. Because humor will relax you, it will make you open up, and it will make you loosey-goosey, and you're not taking yourself seriously. And then you can use that state of being more relaxed and also using humor in your speeches. Which brings to mind a question I've often been asked by people about the International Speech Contest, because for some reason people think that the International Speech Contest is supposed to be serious. Well, yes, it's inspirational and motivational, but the way that the people generally who accomplish that is there's a big dose of humor in that message. They use the humor to set up for the tension, and that's what you really want in a good speech. On the handout I mentioned, you really want to have a storytelling. These speeches that say, this is my formula for a better life, A, B, C, and people will have these methods. The FACE method, which is face your fears. A, attitude. C, control them. E, energy. At the higher levels, they're not about that. They're about stories that have a universal thing. There is a book, and I'll repeat this at the end. It's called How to Win the World Championship of Public Speaking. Jeremy Donovan. It's available on Amazon. It is fantastic. It is not necessarily for people who want to even enter it, but what this guy has done is he has analyzed the World Championship of Public Speaking for the past 20 or 30 years. He tells you what the themes were, how long the longest opening, what the shortest opening. He dissects. He had the speeches from 2 years ago, and he has actually reprinted in the book the speeches, and then he has dissected them, the openings, the appearance of the speakers. And so the information that's in there can apply to the speeches or presentations that you give at your club level or at work. But if you want to do contests, particularly, he also mentions humor. He does publications dealing with TED Talks, the presentations that people do. And he's actually going to be doing a book coming out, I guess, if it's not already out, with, he's the world, he won in 2012. He was Avery. Ryan Avery. And again, that was a perfect example of how humor really made the difference. But he's going to be doing the book. But that is an incredible asset because it just really breaks down things that you think but you're not sure. How many laughs, he analyzes how many laughs in a 7-minute speech were in those winning speeches. Who had the most laughs, who had the least laughs. And then you can correlate sometimes the amount of laughs. And it doesn't mean the topics aren't serious. But when people are listening to presentation, they don't want to be taken down. I can tell you, in real life, people want to be taken up. And that applies across the board. Humor, and this is something that's taken me a long time to learn, and I think I've learned more in the past 4 years, in my 17 years as a Toastmaster, than I did in all the 13 before that. But the importance of humor, whether it's in table topics, whether it's an evaluation contest, I cannot stress it enough. And an evaluation contest, I'll just jump into that very quickly. For some reason, people do not bring the same energy and enthusiasm to evaluation contests, or even giving evaluations in clubs that they do to the humorous and international speech. Why that is, I don't know. An evaluation is a mini speech, and it should have all the same techniques that you do in a speech. Vocal variety, gestures, specificity, a lot of things. But people, a lot of times, the evaluator walks up, will stand behind the lectern, and you would think that you're going to deliver a eulogy. We're here today to mourn the fun feeling that we could have had from giving an evaluation. And then they would tell the person, there's no enthusiasm. You want the same joy, the same enthusiasm, the same excitement and passion in giving your evaluation that you would give in a speech. And I have seen some very humorous evaluations, and one of the things I've seen consistently is that the people who interject humor in whether it's table topics, evaluations, and international speech, they tend to have a very good reception by the audience, and sometimes by the judges. I'm not kidding. And part of that is, and that is why I think you'll have to do humorous speeches, so you don't take yourself too seriously. But humor, I can't stress it enough. It's super important in terms of presentations, in terms of speeches. Humor acts like hot sauce. It wakes people up. And what humor does is when you laugh, more oxygen goes to your brain, and when more oxygen goes to your brain, then you're taking the information better. And so there's a physiological base. At this point, I've got a red card. I don't like to go over. What I'll do is we'll just do some Q&As for a few minutes. Will that work for Paul? Will that work for people? Q&As or questions or comments?
I have a question. When you're on stage, do you recommend that I'm talking about staging.
Yes.
Stand in one spot and then move to the left, to the right? Or do you stand?
Great question. When I started off, I think I was stationary. What they tell you to do is purposeful movement. So in other words, you want your movement to match the message. If you think about it, if you stay behind the lectern is a barrier between you and your audience, right? So it says, there's some distance. I'm a space invader. Whether it is for a club speech, a word presentation, if the judges tell me the line is right here, I'm going to push that line. Why? Because one, I can feel more connected. Now, I'm not going to yell at you guys, and I'm not dangerous. But two, it also sends a message to the audience and the judges that you're confident and that you like them and that you want to be a part of them. Here, we're basically conversational space. A little larger room, it's a little harder. But the point is, when I'm back here, now there is a distance. We're not connecting the same way. In terms of movement, again, one of the things that happens is I've seen some people, they talk, make a point, they stop. Then they talk, stop. Your movement should either further their speech or help with transitions. Sometimes, and it depends on type of speech and the point you're making, how your movement should be. So if you're talking about something that happens chronologically, you may want to do a timeline. So here's one part of your speech, activities that happen earlier in your life. This might be activities that happen later in your life. And this may be the culmination of what you're talking about. Now, one of the reasons I want to come over here is I've got a little bit of an audience here. I don't want you to feel, Jim, I don't want you to feel left out. And so what happens is movement allows you to take in some of the audience. But again, if I'm doing a timeline, I will start, for instance, years. So this might be 1985 over here. This might be 1992. This might be 2008. And if something happened in one particular year, that's when I stop. And then, again, what you want to do, though, is not to make it abrupt. So you want to transition between 2008, and you have a topic or a subject that then will get you moving again. And then the next thing will be in 2009. And then, in 2009, I wish I knew what I did in 2009. I knew so much more than I did in 1995 when I did X. In 1995, I knew more than I did in 1982 when I did X. And then I reversed the timeline. And so then I've come back full circle. But I've used movement like that. If I'm telling a story, then when I was in an evaluation contest 2011, the person had a great story. But I told him he had the busiest basement in the world because everything happened. And when you tell stories, you want to think about the setting. So in other words, if you've got all of this area, everything doesn't have to happen here. This can be an office, this could be a store, this could be a bedroom. So you want different parts of the stage to factor into different parts of your story. But this guy made everything. I mean, there was, I think, a suicide, the police came, everything was right there. And I said to him, that was the most crowded, congested, active area. Yeah, I did. I did. And my suggestion to him was, in terms of staging, that something happened there, one event happened there. One event happened there, one event happened there. It also helps the audience to see better as a story. So that I don't want to get up here in the bedroom in the morning, go to work here, and then have the gym be here. But some people will do that. So again, and this is something you think about as you give this speech, the way you would do it if you were doing a play or something. Where are different things going to happen? Is your door going to be here? If the entrance is here or the exit is there, and you need to use something else happening over here, these are sorts of things. Now, what you don't want to do is some people, they will just get so nervous. They're basically like a tiger. You ever seen a tiger lying in the zoo when they just pace back and forth? The reason that animals do that is after so many years of confinement in a small area, they're neurotic. That's just what happens. Because in the wild, they roam for miles and miles every day, and now they're living in a little area. But what you see with some people is, especially when they're pumped up, but they'll talk to the audience, and they go back and forth, and back and forth. Whoa! No, it's not purposeful movement. And so again, the amount of movement is also should go with the amount of speech. If you're talking about children doing something in a playground, then I think children, you might want to have sliding board here, seesaw here, swings here. If you've got space, use it. But one of the things that happens in a lot of stories, there is some movement. Somebody comes in, somebody goes. So that's the issue with space. And when you do walk, you really want a natural movement. You want to walk like you normally do. When I think I started off, I looked at a videotape a few weeks ago when I first started. I was doing the electric slide. So I talked to one side of the room here, and then to get to the other side, I think I took a long step like this, and I did a side step. And yeah, no, that's not how we normally move. We normally move just walking, right? We put one foot after the other. And in terms of, and what that also does, helps you stop not to trip over yourself. You have to be careful. But you just want your natural, you want your natural movements. And so that's the thing about movement. And then some judges like people who move more. Some judges like people who don't move. And so that's what I mean. You really have to feel it. There are some people, I tend to be very animated, jump around speaker. So I had a little issue with a sciatic nerve last year. The sciatic nerve won temporarily. So I moved, but not the way I used to. I used to really, and then some people would say, well, that's too much for me. You just find what works for you. So that's the thing with movement, and you try different styles. And that's the whole thing about feedback and evaluation. So you ask people, and generally in terms of contest, or ask people that you know are very good speakers, that you look at them and you think, gee, they're pretty good. And I would tend to value their advice maybe more than a novice. Because and so I would ask them, how did you think that was? How did the movement fit? And one of the things we do in evaluations, you really should, particularly in contests, is personalize it. I feel, I think, because I see it one way. Paul may see it another way. So that if someone receives a bad or harsh evaluation, number one, it's easier to tell them this was just that person's perspective. And again, what I think is not enough movement, Paul may think is just right. And for people who are thinking about doing contests or to be better speakers, this is the perfect time of year to volunteer as a test speaker. Be a test speaker at your club, be a test speaker at other clubs, be a test speaker in the area. Because what happens is you will get feedback from 3 or 4 different people, sometimes 4 or 5. And if you do it at 2 or 3 different clubs, then you may get feedback from 9 people and you do the same speech. And how often does that happen? So that really helps you. And what will happen is, out of 9 evaluations, if you get 6 people who are saying the same thing in terms of, I thought this worked, or this was really bad, then you know it's really, and so that's the important thing for all the speeches is the feedback. I know I did an evaluation contest years ago when I was starting, and I had a great opening that I just loved, and I did it and I thought, wow. 5 people came up to me and told me it stunk. That's why I say contests also help you to speed up your growth. Because in a club setting, in Toastmasters, we are so polite. We learn as evaluator to always say things in a very nice way to people. And so if you're, no matter how bad you are, no one's going to really tell you that. But for a contest, because they know it's competitive, they would just take off the gloves sometimes and say, well, to be frank, you know, that didn't work. And so for me, with my evaluation, the first person came up to me, and I think it was Jill, she said, oh my God, I think you forgot which contest you were in because your opening took so long. I thought you were in the international speech contest. Then the second person came up, and I think it was John Melman, he's from South Africa, and he said, my God, man, I'm surprised you won. You didn't like your opening. The first two people, I said, yeah, I thought it was nice. When the third person came up, Susan Barone, she said, Clarence, what was that? I don't know, I was just trying something. And by 4 and 5, I just threw in the towel and told them, no, I didn't like it. I didn't like it either. And I see you've got a red card. If I can just do a couple more quick questions, and then...
For a petite and soft-spoken person,
yes.
What suggestion would you have to make it easier?
That's a very good. One thing is, again, this is where you would get the feedback. And you know, the perfect example of the question you just asked was this past year's District 27 International Speech Contest winner, Chie Tamaki. So Chie is petite, probably about your size, and generally soft-spoken. So when we started and Paul was good enough to schedule practice sessions. I was representing District 36, Chie was representing District 27. And he had us go to different clubs, and we got feedback from people. And with Chie, it was interesting because, again, that was a common comment that she would receive from people. We want you to project, to be a little louder. And at the end of the summer, you could see the growth from when she started. The other thing I noticed, and people noticed, that in her speech, there were some very emotional, some painfully emotional points. She expressed those emotions and didn't hold back. And her volume, and her intensity, when her husband told her that she was ugly. And there was a scene when she just took you into the living room and a confrontation with her and her ex-husband. And it hurt. I mean, it was just one of those things. The audiences would come up to her afterwards and she would tell you, Paul said, you're ugly. And you could feel the pain, and I think because she expressed it so well, people came up to her after her speech and just said, Chie, you're not ugly, you're beautiful. That was one of the things evaluators, how could he say that? And I would say to the evaluators who would evaluate me, no one has said I'm attractive. Everyone has told Chie. But I think that's it, a speech about something that can also allow you to get a little louder. Sports. Something, a humor speech. Something that takes you out of your comfort zone. So if you can think about a situation where it's okay to be a little louder, a little more animated, trying out for American Idol, or what people do on American Idol, then what happens is you don't have to be you. You can be somebody else, and you can, that's what being up here allows you to do sometimes, is try out different things. And that's something else I just want to share with you. Allow yourself permission to fail. The only way you know what works is to find out what doesn't work. And the only way you find out what doesn't work is to try it. And the only way that I've learned what works is I can tell you, I have made mistakes in so many ways that some of you will never even think about. So I afterwards go, you know, that didn't work. I won't do it again. But allow yourself permission. You don't have to be the best. Just have fun and try. Quick, 1 or 2 more questions and I'm going to the last question. Last question.
Can it be a 2-headed one? I want this.
3-headed.
The name of that book again.
The name of the book. The author is Jeremy Donovan. And Donovan, D-O-N-O-V-A-N. Jeremy Donovan. And the title is How to Win the World Championship of Public Speaking. It's available on Amazon. See one of my reviews, and I just raved. I gave it like I sit on a scale of 1 to 10, it's a 15.
Wow.
I was really impressed. Second question.
In evaluation contests, some evaluations I've seen done by PCMs, they're like if I was the model speaker and you're the evaluator, you would keep eye contact with me, you wouldn't speak to the whole room. It'd be like you were only talking to me. What do you think about that?
I think, again, different people have different styles. when I do evaluation contests, I talk to the speaker and also the audience, because you're trying to reach both the speaker and the judges, as well as educate the audience. And again, it depends. Different people have different, styles and things. And again, I just want to tell people, go to contests, watch, go to YouTube. There are tons of contest speeches. I'm going to put in a plug for me. I have MCS. Some of you may not know that. It's called middle child syndrome. Toastmasters has been wonderful for me because I get a lot of the attention as a middle child. I was overshadowed by an older sister who was super accomplished, and I always lived in her shadow, and then a younger brother who was the baby. So with Toastmasters, even if you're up here for a few minutes, people clap, you're the center of attention, you are the star. And so on YouTube, though, you can just go to the drop-down bar, Toastmasters, and then you can plug in evaluation contests. People actually have a district evaluation contest tape. They have the winning speeches. They have international. They have district speeches, area, and there are clips also of the World Championship of Public Speaking. So YouTube is a great resource because it is free. You can look at it when you want. And again, because I have MCS, just plug in Clarence Featherson and you'll pull up some of my speeches and contests and other things. And so also different people in different districts. So Paul, let's have some fun up here. Come on down. Thank you.